Thank you for coming by, everyone. I have wanted to make this video for quite a while, and I kind of feel like there's no reason to just not make it. So, it's about 3:15 in the morning. I got back from Disneyland, and I had two shots of coffee and caffeine and a B complex, so I'm like wide awake and ready to make a video at 3 in the morning. So here I am. I lived through the Northridge earthquake, and obviously I lived in LA and LA County, and my friends, and I had several family members there, and we all went through it. And with permission, I'm going to also add what someone really close to me went through. And I'm going to let you know, what it was like, especially from a perspective of someone who was really young and didn't prepare for anything like that. Different people had different experiences, and it's been about last January, mid-January. We're now in April of 2024, and last January was the 30th anniversary of the Northridge quake, and I've been wanting to make this video for quite a while. So I was living at home. My dad was still alive at the time, and so I was living with my dad, and it happened really early in the morning, and I lived in a smaller house that was made in like the 1930s. It was built in the 1930s, and it was pretty tough. And I woke up, and to the left of me, my closet door was open, and my shoes were like spitting out because it was like the quake was back and forth. And so it was like my shoe boxes that were on the shelf were like spitting out every time the earth would move back and forth. And but we didn't really have a lot of damage. The chimney got cracked, so we couldn't use the fireplace. And I think we had a picture fall off the wall. But, and we had a really large TV, but I don't think anything happened with the TV. And it was, and when I mean large, I mean like these giant Sony Trinitrons. Like, you would not want that thing to fall on you. Anyway, so the power was out. I think it knocked the power out, and it was basically protocol. Everybody knew the protocol that if you had an earthquake, you go outside and you shut off the gas immediately. And so, and you can't turn the gas back on by yourself. You have to wait for the gas company to come out. So, the power was out. We shut the gas off. I think the water was still working. I think the water was okay. And the telephone lines worked because, everything back then was a copper landline, which I will talk about later because I still have that. It's important to me, and I'll tell you why later. Anyway, I had a friend call me to make sure I was okay, and I was. So, it was one of those things where we had a pretty quiet neighborhood. And my parents had lived through the Depression, the Great Depression. And so we always had a lot of canned food in the house. And that was just a product of living through the Depression. My parents always had canned food in the house. a decent amount, not tons and tons and tons. And that's kind of the thing. You don't really need tons and tons and tons. You'd be surprised how little goes a long way. And as far as water is concerned, we, like many families, we had sparklets. We had a water service that had they would bring these gigantic water bottles. And that's what we used for water. We had the water coolers. And then the sparklets guy would come by we're talking a long time ago, decades ago, probably every couple of weeks. Maybe it was once a week. I don't know, but we would, and this is just how long it's been. Anyway, you would leave the empties out. They would take the empties of these giant water bottles, and they were heavy. They were heavy water bottles. And you would rip the top off, like the plastic cap, and then you would lift it up and you would try to get it in, and it would glug, 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 and you would hope to not spill on the floor. Anyway, my point in bringing all this up, you're probably thinking, why is she talking about sparklets? It was normal for us to default have a separate water supply because we bought sparklets because that water tasted better than the tap water. So we weren't trying to prep with water, but we naturally had water because we had sparklets. So that was the water, and the extra food was just because my parents were like, yeah, we always want food in the house because going hungry sucks. Due to them living through the Depression. Okay, so now you know. So we had some, and we were good. And you always have candles. You always have candles, and just be really careful. And we were always really careful with our candles. The mayor of Los Angeles at that time, I believe, was Richard Riordan. He was a good mayor. And I remember listening on the radio. So obviously we were able to get the radio in. So have a radio. And they were talking about how, and this was, when it happened, they said it would take 3 days for city services to be able to most likely accommodate people if they needed, things like food and water, things like that. And so I kind of think that's where it's a standard when you get these like FEMA lists or Red Cross lists that tell you what to store and that you should have at least 3 days. And I'm guessing that's because it will take like a solid 3 days for the government to be able to help people. Now, we naturally had more than 3 days. And after a few days, within a few days, I would say, the power came back on and the gas company came out and it was okay for us. We didn't have that much of a problem. People start rebuilding and, they get on with their lives. And incidentally, I'm going to bring this up a couple times because, I've seen the movie Leave the World Behind. And I have to say, there were a couple points I thought that were interesting that I'm going to bring up a little bit later. But at the end, you know how a lot of different movies have like Easter eggs, or they have like extra footage of what happens, after the main movie. Of course, Leave the World Behind didn't. But if they did, if they had any film of what happened to people after the credits run, I can guarantee you, to be authentic, it would be this. and then they rebuilt. Okay, so if there would be anything that Leave the World Behind would say, and would be honest about it, if they had something after the credits, it would be, and then they rebuilt, because that's what people do. People rebuild. They get on with their lives, and they make things better. Now, I believe the Northridge earthquake, something interesting too. So I went back to work. I can't remember if it happened on a Sunday or Monday, but I believe it happened on my day off, the Northridge quake. It was either Sunday or Monday, because those were my days off. And I worked at a gallery. And back then, you had fax machines. Yes, you still have fax machines now, but they were really common, and people used fax machines a lot with a thermal paper. Now people use emails, and, they text and do it, but we didn't have all that, okay? We did not have smartphones back then. 30 years ago, we had fax machines. And I kid you not, I got a fax. I was a one-woman office manager. I got a fax, and it happened twice because they got the phone number wrong. They got the fax number wrong. They sent it to me instead of where it was supposed to go, or they sent it to where I worked, basically, accidentally. And it was either from Caltech or to Caltech, or something. I think it might have been from Cal. Anyway, it was from a known earthquake place. Anyway, I'm bringing this up because it literally had the earthquake number readings for each city in LA. And they were different. So I guess, and I guess it makes sense because each city experiences things differently. So it must have been how they experienced the earthquake. Each city. And I got to tell you, many of them, the number was a lot bigger than it got reported. They said it twice. And then they must have realized, whoopsie. And that was it. Anyway, that was an interesting thing I remembered. But so about a week later, and I think the Northridge quake, I seem to recall that this epicenter was Reseda. I think it was. Anyway, I had a friend in Reseda, and her house got hit bad, and I mean bad. It was very bad. So I thought, hey, I called her on the phone because the phone was working. Why don't I take you out to lunch? And she was all for it, why not? So, I drove, and it probably took me an hour to get to her house because I took Ventura Boulevard, which is a very long through, Ventura runs through the valley. And so I took Ventura Boulevard to get to Reseda. And again, so this is about a week after the quake. I would look around me as I was driving, and people were cleaning up and getting on with their lives, but it was really interesting because I would drive past these buildings, and Ventura Boulevard was built up, not like it's built up today. It is really built up with the buildings were kind of smaller back then. 30 years ago, the buildings weren't as tall. Not all of them, but anyway, there would be apartments or condos or whatever. And it would be I would drive past them, and I was driving past them on Ventura Boulevard, and it would be okay, totally fine on the outside, fine, damaged, fine, damaged, okay, really badly damaged. So it had this sort of randomness to it, which I thought was odd. And on the way there, I made it a point to go drive around the outside of the Northridge Mall. And it was the weirdest thing. I wish I had had a camera with me. I don't think I had a camera with me. I definitely not, you didn't have a camera phone. If you had a camera with you, it was a film camera. I don't think I had a camera with me. Anyway, it looked like one part of it looked like this giant foot had come out of the sky, and like the heel portion of it just like took out a center of one side of the building. Like you could look in, it's like if you cracked open a toy dollhouse and you could see like all 3 layers, like all 3 levels. That's what it was like. I mean, it really was a trip to see. So I drove around and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty bad. Anyway, so then I took my friend to lunch and we had a nice lunch. And, you do what people do. You get on with your life. So now my friend, I have a dear friend or someone I really care about that had a different experience. Now they lived in a building that had these what's the word? Like these shock absorbers, so kind of springy shock absorbers, and it was a worse experience. So, like as I told you, my experience was just kind of like this back and forth. But I think his building had more, movement, and it was pretty bad. I mean, like he had a refrigerator. I think it was a refrigerator that like jumped over a kitchen island. He had a piece of big furniture fall on him. Like he was home from work that day because he was not feeling well, and so he asked a friend to go into work for him, to take his shift, and anyway, when this piece of furniture like fell on him, he literally just he twisted around, and his adrenaline was so high he just threw it off. It was very, very traumatic. It was a very traumatic experience. And his friend, his coworker at work, he lived in the Northridge Meadows apartments. And that probably doesn't mean much to most people that watch this video, but the Northridge Meadows, well, it lost their first floor. It just, I don't know. I mean, what it was like. I didn't really investigate why the Northridge Meadows, the first floor collapsed, but a lot of people died. And because this person that I'm very close with, because they asked the coworker to go in, that coworker was up and in the shower, and when they were in the shower, they just felt this whoomp. And like, what happened? They didn't realize what happened. And they had like, I don't know, like a bookshelf or something that they're using as a headboard, and it just went psh, and it would have like crushed them. So they dodged a very bad ending in that, and unfortunately the neighbors below them died. But they were able to just make their way out, and they made it through. But anyway, so I think out of all those four experiences, mine was the least traumatic. But it's important to prepare for certain things. And I'm going to put in some footage. I think I'm going to put in some footage like right here of me with my phone because I have a copper landline. Obviously, I have a cell phone. Everybody's got a cell phone, so you can get calls usually anywhere with your cell phone. But I have a copper landline because I don't want to rely on a cable phone. Copper landlines, they carry their own electrical current. And except for one time that I regret not having a copper landline, I only had a cable phone because I was convinced against my better judgment. And it was almost a disaster. So I'm never doing that again. I'm going to put in footage of what the phone looks like, because it doesn't plug into the wall for electricity. It just plugs into the phone line. The phone line just plugs into it. And when I lift it up, you'll see the lights, the keys, the buttons light up to show that it's got power. So anyway, so I think I'll put that here. This is my Trimline phone, which is only attached to a copper landline. The power comes through. You can see it's lighting up the buttons. The power comes through the actual phone line, and it is independent of the electrical grid. Okay, now getting back to Leave the World Behind, I have to tell you, another thing 30 years ago when the Northridge earthquake happened, and again, no cell phones, no map apps, you had something called the Thomas Guide. Okay, I loved my Thomas Guide. It was LA. I think it was LA and Orange County, but definitely LA. And it's like every part of the city with a street, and you could look up, and that's how you figured out where to go. You would find an address, like, okay, you'd call, like, where are you located? Okay, that's your address. All right. So you would look up the address in the Thomas Guide, and then you would use the maps and figure out how to get there, and you would write it out yourself. And so when Leave the World Behind, the guy's like, I don't know where to go. I just kept driving. I don't know. And I'm like, after that section of the movie was over, I paused it and I went online and I bought Thomas Guides. And I was really thrilled to find out that they updated it as of, I think, 2022. So it's pretty accurate. I mean, it's obviously, it's been updated in the last 30 years, very recently. I'm very happy about that. I bought 2 of them. I bought a couple of them, and I bought some regular maps too, and I bought an atlas. I went crazy. I'm like, I want that, and I want that, and I want that. This is not sponsored by anybody. That's not sponsored by Thomas Guide or like any phone manufacturer or anything like that. It's just me. It's me talking about it. And so let me put the map in, I'll put the map right here. Okay. The footage. All right, just briefly, this is the most recent Thomas Guide from 2022. It's the first part is LA, Los Angeles County. The second part is Orange County. You look up your street name, and then you look up the number of the street that you want to go to, and then it basically tells you what page, what map to go to, and what grid to go to. And it has that for every street in LA, and then, of course, every street in Orange County. And basically, that's how you do it. You figure out where you're going to, and then kind of work your way backwards. And that's how we did it before phones had map apps on them and did the work for us. But if the grid goes down, this is what you're going to use. And I'm really happy there's a recent version of it. Right there. Okay. Anyway, this is going to be new editing for me. I've never done this before, so. Also, I was going to film this. I'm not going to stop filming this, but I was going to bring in some of these really cool Energizer flashlights, big flashlights. I'm just going to put a link. Again, not sponsored. I don't have any kind of kickback from Amazon or anything. But the newer flashlights that I got, they're really cool. They're really inexpensive, and they're really lightweight, which is nice. And I'm going to tell you the way it is. You get this, you'll unscrew the front part of it, and there's 4 batteries in like a battery holder. And when I bought 2 of them, and when I got them, one worked and one did not. And so I opened it up, and you just have to make sure that the batteries are set properly in, and then you put them in, and then it worked just fine. And the light is really bright, and it's wonderful. And I think that's a good thing to have, for many, many reasons. You're going to need a light like that, going out at night and putting the trash out, or the lights start flickering and you want to have something near you in case the lights go out, things like that. So anyway, that's about it. That's kind of my thoughts about the Northridge earthquake. I made it through okay. Everybody I knew made it through okay. My grandmother was in town, staying with my uncle, who lived in Northridge. He actually lived in Northridge. And it really scared my grandmother. But I don't think anything bad happened to the house. My uncle was a contractor, and he was really good at what he did. And so I think he probably had a really sturdy house, and I think it was a single story. I lived in a single story. I don't think I mentioned that. And it wasn't huge. It was pretty well made, like I said, in the 30s. It was a little less than 1,200 square feet. It was 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Yes, it is possible to live in a house with 1 bathroom, although not preferred, but you could do it. Anyway, and so yeah, that was it. And my point is that I got through it. I didn't have a huge amount of preparations. It was just things you naturally had to have. And people 30 years ago, they did a few more things for themselves. I mean, I changed my own motor oil and okay, well, I should say I added my own motor oil. I didn't change my own motor oil, but I did change like headlights in my Miata. So for my when I drove my mom's Volkswagen. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. The point is that if you set some things aside, so that you can be more self-reliant, you won't regret it. That's the point. Okay, and I'll put some things in the in some links in the box below for you to look at, and that's basically it. So, yeah, disasters can happen. You just need to put a few things aside. I'm not saying you should limit yourself, but don't get overwhelmed. You don't need to get overwhelmed or wonder where to start. It's have some basics, have some extra basics, and just think about, okay, what if life gets disrupted for a few days? One last thing. Obviously TV was out. We did not have, lots of electronics and things like, because the power was out anyway. So my dad had made this like marble game. He made a marble game. I'm just going to leave it at that. We played the marble game a lot. He won the marble game most of the time. It made him very happy to win the marble game. A couple times I won the marble game. I was thrilled. So, have some things that you like to do. Like, if you like certain board games, obviously you can't play a board game with yourself. So, the people you live with, it helps if you like the people you live with, because you're going to be talking to them a lot in a disaster. And have something to do. And that's kind of about it. That was it. Yeah. And hopefully, although it's been quite a while, I'm not saying LA is due for an earthquake. I'm not going to put that out in the universe, but if it happens, we'll get through it. So just have some extra food that you like to eat, and don't forget the can opener. All right, I'm going to end it on that. Take care.